Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's new this week, David?
Hey, Jesse. Well, this week was the Possible Conference, and it went really well. There was a great group of people from the ad tech space. Like it was huge. It was just crazy. Saw a lot of familiar faces. Met some new people. Met some people that I've talked to for years and never met in person. So that was kind of fun too. And overall, it was a really good couple of days. So.
Ooh, awesome. I'd like to hear that. Would love to learn more about it if you got any materials about it. I don't know, maybe there's some inspiration for marketing in there, but until we get to that conversation, I look forward to this episode today. And I know
Yeah.
you do too, because we're thrilled to welcome on Andrew Littlewood. He is Brainlabs Chief Planning and Data Officer. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hey, how you doing, Jessie? David, nice to see you.
Hey. Yeah, absolutely, Andy. We're glad you're able to join us today. We're excited for this conversation, and we would love for you to sort of kick it off for us, give our viewers and listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit of background about you, about Brainlabs, and sort of what led you to become the Chief Planning and Data Officer at Brainlabs.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And you can call me Andy now because we know each other. So
for sure.
Move on from Andrew, which is my more formal name. So yeah, nice to meet everyone here who's listening, watching. I'm the Chief Planning and Data Officer at Brainlabs in North America, which means I run our strategy and planning teams at Brainlabs and then our data team. Broadly, the strategy and planning team are helping people navigate, our clients navigate the cross-channel environment, helping them understand essentially how to take their business challenges and then solve for that with media so that it drives the right kind of business results for them. And then on the data side, we help with that work and understanding the connection between media and sales and revenue, and ultimately do that through a variety of forms of advanced analytics and various other data science techniques. So that's what I do day in, day out. And yeah, I mean, Brainlabs is a very science-focused company, so it's a great place to do all of that.
That's awesome. And I think that we're going to jump right into our conversation because I'm excited to have this conversation about how data and AI are redefining creative advertising. Why don't you kick this off for us? I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's safe to say that they are, right? Data and the AI are redefined, maybe have redefined advertising, creative advertising already. There's a great stat I saw just to kick us off from a recent Salesforce piece of research. They said about 87% of marketers are using generative AI at least one recurring workflow as of Q1 this year, right? So almost all marketers, all creative people, all media people are using AI in the workflow. So it's definitely redefined what we're doing. I think, it's given us new ways to look at data. We can process far larger amounts of data now. We can connect lots of different types of data. It's helping us with content production, right? So it's helping us to really produce things a lot faster, a lot better at greater scale. It's helping us with audience targeting, audience identification. It's helping us with media optimization. So I think in all of that, it's completely redefining what we do and really taking a lot of the jobs that were difficult or pipes that couldn't be connected or data that couldn't be connected, and it's helping us to solve for that, make things a lot faster. And I think ultimately, is allowing people to think more critically about what they're doing and really function at higher levels. So I would always say that we're in the process now of automating and upscaling almost across every facet of marketing. So, it's changing what we do for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think there's I've been in this space for a while. I assume you have as well. Like, I don't think there's ever been anything that has created so much change in such a short period of time as AI has. And I also think that we're really just only hitting the tip of the iceberg of how much change it will be.
I agree. I mean, we've seen other new technologies before. We only have to look back, say, 4 or 5 years to the metaverse. If you remember that, that was quite a popular thing for a while. But I think the thing that is really distinguishes AI is that everyone is using it, right? You know, when I think back to the metaverse, we talked a lot about it, but not many people were really using the metaverse.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like even, you know, my kids, my wife, you know, everyone is using AI. So that wide scale adoption and the speed with which it's happened is, I think, overshadows pretty much every technology I've seen before. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, and I think redefining is a good explanation for it, because it's not just change. It's completely, you know, it's a complete overhaul. I mean, everything from, you know, to your point, everything from how creatives are generated, to how ads are targeted, to how the measurement is done, is all being, you know, being touched by AI.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely at Brainlabs re-engineering all of our processes, right? So we would consider ourselves an AI first company now. And we're coming at everything through that mindset, and, you know, starting to look at all of the different ways that we did things, and how we can do those fully through AI integrated processes. And I think, you know, a lot of businesses are doing the same thing, and it's just now really a question of how quickly you can do that, and how fast you can adopt, and how you can build all of those processes in the right way to scale them going forward. So.
Yeah. So here on Deconstructing Data, we have predicted the future a number of times in the past, right? Right, Jessie? I mean,
Wow.
It's true. It's so true.
It is absolutely true. And early on in one of our very early episodes, we had a conversation about software development and coding. And this is before ChatGPT and all of that stuff. And we had a conversation about how we believed that at some point in time in the near future, you would be able to just, you know, tell something. At the time, we didn't know what it was, but tell something, a platform of software, what you wanted to create, and it would write all the code for you and create it for you. And we eventually got there. And this was a conversation that we had years ago on this podcast before it ever happened. And so I'm going to ask you, here, because I like to talk about AI and advertising. It's the space, you know, that we're very heavily invested in. And I'm always interested in talking to other people in the same space, what they think the future is as far as AI and advertising. And like I said, I think we have only really hit the tip of the iceberg. I think there's going to be a lot more that will evolve eventually. We don't know when, but I'd be curious to know, based on your experience and where you see the future of AI and advertising, things that aren't being done today that you believe will be done in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at that from two aspects, right? There's one way I think about it is the way that we operate within advertising, marketing, and how it will change that. And then I think the other side of the coin is consumers, right? And how AI will change the consumer landscape. I think for us in advertising and in the way we operate, it kind of simply means that we will do less of the day-to-day tasks that we used to do. You know, I think more and more of that will just run, and I'll talk about this later, but through skills, through agentic workflows, through processes that just kind of happen automatically. So then the critical thing for people in our industry going forward will be judgment, right? And critical thinking, and the ability to evaluate what's happening in all of those automated workflows. So I think that's one big thing. So if you ask me, you know, what does the future look like? It looks like, you know, much more automation and a much greater focus on judgment and critical thinking, and really, you know, people in client-facing roles or in other roles becoming true experts in their discipline to look across all of the things that they perhaps used to have to do manually. And then I think, you know, on the consumer side, I mean, we see a massive progression there where, and it's happening so quickly, right? So if you think, 60% of searches now or more have an AI overview within them, right? So if I go and Google something, I get an AI overview. So I'm engaging with an LLM, and then I can start to ask more questions, or I can be engaging with LLMs, directly through Claude or ChatGPT. And then with that, what's happening is that the way that people are engaging is changing, right? So we used to type in search terms, and now we're typing in paragraphs, short life stories in some cases, into the search bar to get a response, and then iteratively working through that. So, we are kind of collapsing a lot of long processes. It might have taken me 2 or 3 months to research something before. Now it will take me 5 prompts. And I can go from start to finish and understand what it is I want to make a decision on. So we see that intensity happening, and the fact that, purchase funnels, decision journeys, whatever you want to call them, are collapsing. And with that, people are given far more information along the way. So, I think that's going to have a profound impact on how we think about advertising, and the way that, brands behave and the types of content they'll need to produce in the future. So,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. And Jessie, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun, and I that question really should have been held for the third topic, because that's that was actually very closely tied to our third topic, and I didn't realize it until I said it. But maybe we can dig a little more into this, because this was one of our topics, and sort of the future of advertising. And I already asked you sort of what you see the future is, and you talked about that. But what else, with respect to this topic, this topic was also about emerging industry trends. So I'd love to get your take of what other trends you're seeing. The search one is certainly one that we're all seeing. And I'm curious, how that'll actually change search too, because I don't know that anybody, scrolls down or clicks, to the 10th page of a search results screen anymore,
Yeah, well, I mean, very few people did that anyway, David. But so it was always typically page 1 or 2. But certainly the intensity has increased for brands, right? Because they need to be. We talk about now citations and mentions, right? So that's basically when you're mentioned in the response of an LLM, and then a citation is if you get linked out, your website gets a link within that response. That's obviously an intense battleground now, and actually a very volatile one. If you look at, typically search had become quite predictable, and it was becoming, easier for large brands to win in the search environment. But now if you look in the LLM environment, there are lots and lots of different brands mentioned, cited, not necessarily the big ones, usually the ones who are structuring their content in the right way to be drawn in by the engines, right, and referenced by the engines. So, that's one big trend, this kind of volatility that's emerging as a result of this, and a real opportunity for challenger brands to take a hold, right? Because before they used to have massive advertising budgets and big paid search budgets, but now actually they can, through being very smart with how they manage their content, they can appear much more readily in the LLM. So that's a big topic area. And then I think with that, brands starting to think about how do they make the most of their AI visibility, and how can they build, say, LLM seeding strategies to appear more often. So we talk a lot about what we call the organic media mix. And that's essentially a way for you to think about, as a brand, how do I seed my content in the right places and reputable forums like Reddit and Medium, so that then I eventually end up back in the LLM mentions and citations. So,
yeah. Now, I don't use ChatGPT that much, but I've read about them adding advertising into the results somehow. Do you know anything about this? Like, I haven't seen it, so I don't know enough about it and how they plan on doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they launched that model earlier this year
Mm-hmm.
to a limited group of advertisers, and it was a CPM-based model. So you paid, a fairly high CPM to appear in the listings or in the prompt response.
Mm-hmm.
And many advertisers jumped on for that with the opportunity to really test out this new kind of open slate of advertising. From there, I mean, it was, I think, fairly successful. Like they sold all of the slots that they needed to sell. There were plenty of advertisers who wanted to be in there. But I think they were still working out really what the ad model is and how that's going to work going forward. And I think that is the big question, right, for all of the companies. I think we will certainly see advertising within LLMs and the AIOs and all of the places where LLMs are. It's just a question of how that will function and what the buying model will be. And then on the flip side of that, how will advertisers be able to measure what happens and how that generates an outcome for them? So at the moment, I know a lot of bright minds within, a lot of the biggest companies like Google and Anthropic are thinking about these types of approaches. So.
Interesting. I'm wondering also how that'll affect the consumer model as far as paid accounts and things like that. Will the advertising only be for unpaid accounts and or what?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can look at CTV or OTT, app-based TV as a good analogy, right? Where, what we've seen emerge there is kind of the premium ad-free and then the ad-supported subscription model. Again, you talked about predictions. I'll be bold enough to predict we might see something like that where, there's a more expensive subscription where I don't get ads and a less expensive subscription where I do get ads.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense for sure. Yeah.
So the user becomes the product, much like we've seen on some of these other platforms, like you said. That's interesting. So to kind of summarize this, would you say it's fair to say what you're seeing is that brands don't necessarily have to have the biggest budget anymore. They just need to have a consistent strategy message and, then they don't need to compete with paid ads as much because of AI. So would you say it's like democratizing advertising and making it easier for the small dogs who have a consistent niche message?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, the word I agree with everything you said, apart from maybe the word consistent, because I think this world is about building answer first content, right? So what we're seeing is that, I used to search, say, for a running shoe, right? Or maybe I looked for a running shoe with arch support. And now I might look for a running shoe with arch support for front strike that's good in wet conditions, right? So really the kind of stretch of what I'm looking for and the specificity is really, really grown. And I think the brands that will win will be the ones that understand that actually it's not always consistent. It's actually, there is a large variety of questions out there that they need to answer and structure their content around. I think, yes, be consistent as a brand and how you communicate, but ultimately you're going to have quite a broad net of content to win.
Yeah. Okay. Great point. So we got a comment says brands no longer need super big budgets and don't have to compete with paid ads. Maybe it's democratizing marketing a bit. Yes, absolutely. So we kind of jumped around on topics a little bit.
We did. We skipped a topic. That's my fault.
That's okay. And we can keep jumping around because they're all sort of related, but data-driven creativity using insights to inspire innovative campaigns. Do you want to kick us off on this topic and we'll dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few favorites. I have one one big favorite that I'll talk about. I don't know if you saw recently the Pods campaign. If you know Pods, the storage and moving company, they created
Yeah.
a campaign called the World's Smartest Billboard, where they basically took all of the trucks and storage containers they had, they put digital billboards on the side, and then they used AI to basically stream localized messages, right? So they with AI information and context and knowledge, produced a locally relevant message that might include the weather and the location. So, for example, it's 76 degrees in Brooklyn. Why don't you head to Brooklyn Bridge Park? And I think that's a great example of how this technology is kind of inspiring creativity and inspiring new ways to think about these things. And it really, in the past, a campaign like that would have taken an incredible amount of logistical organization, and you certainly wouldn't have had been capable of the nuance possible to deliver messages like that. It would have been at a much more generalized and aggregated level. So I think that's, it's a good example. There have also been a lot of early adopters in the space. Coca-Cola were pretty early onto the AI trend with they ran a campaign called Masterpiece, which used a lot of AI generated content. I liked what Heinz did, where they used AI image generators and typed in various prompts associated with ketchup to basically prove that the shape of their label and bottle was the most common output from an LLM. So I think it's a great, very fertile creative playground. There's a lot of interesting angles that people are taking within it.
Yeah, interesting. That's fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hadn't
that
heard of
Heinz
that.
one is interesting. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Sort of like adopting the idea that AI will embrace your artwork, whereas I know some artists are like, don't use my artwork on AI, where Heinz is like, here, this is the standard ketchup and AI should just know what it looks like.
Yeah, there's definitely a confidence with that. And I think it's also maybe that is one of the other big shifts I think that's required, where brands will have to let go a little bit of what they're doing in this environment and take a bit of a chance with what's happening and be comfortable that not always will there be absolute consistency. But broadly, if AI is representing their brands in the right way, not the perfect way, that's probably a big win for them, right? So
yeah, it's a huge opportunity for some cheap branding, that they don't have to spend money on if they can they can leverage an AI model using their brand in a way that keeps it top of mind for the consumer.
Yeah. Like if I were going to go make a marketing image for a picnic or something, and I ask it to, create BeatX's picnic for July, and it throws on a ketchup bottle and it just happens to be a Heinz, I might not even catch that because I'm just trying to get people to a picnic. So like, yeah, it's just a really great example of like how to use AI creatively. But data-driven creativity using insights to inspire innovative campaigns. I'm curious too from you, David, because I know, we're helping a lot of brands with their targeting. Have you seen anything interesting lately with like the data, like using the data to like impact the design and the artwork?
Not necessarily the artwork, but the targeting, yes.
Hmm.
But I have to tread lightly because, like, when we're working with a company and they find something that works, I'm not sure that they want me to share it with the world
Yeah,
unless
right.
they have shared it with the world. But there's a
Right.
lot of you can get very strategic in your targeting now because there's a lot more data available. Not only
Hmm.
is there more data available, but it's a lot easier to use. That it used to be that in order to it took a lot more work to analyze large volumes of data. Today, you can analyze large volumes of data very quickly and easily, and anybody can do it with an MCP server, like just by asking questions. And so, I think that what, sort of just to kind of give a little glimpse in it, by analyzing data against the data itself, it's hard to explain. So let's explain it this way. Think of it this way. You can look at the demographics and psychographics and interests of your customers and sort of create a profile. That's one way you can target people, right? And it's a lot of ways, and it's very common right now. There's, endless audience groups out there that are off the shelf, and you can go and you can say, okay, I want to target, whatever, BMW owners that have 2 kids and own a dog, whatever it is, and this is their income. Very easy to do that. But using AI, we can do this very differently. We can build a profile of our existing customers based on data like that. But then we can also ask questions from AI to do things that are a little more creative from the perspective of, rather than just targeting specific people based on those specific data assets, those attributes, what if you had AI do a personality analysis and it analyzed that to understand the personality of the person, the engagement metrics of a person? How should I engage with this person? So you can basically use that same data, but use it in a very different way, and now build a personality profile of your customer, an engagement profile of your customer. And then you can go and say, okay, well, based on that, I want to reach people with that personality profile. And I want to reach them in a way that uses those engagement specific metrics. And so you can get a lot more creative today using data, rather than just using the data itself, but by analyzing the data in a completely different way. And I think that that's what I'm seeing more, is not just using sort of the off-the-shelf data to target, but using AI to, gain insights about consumers, about your customers, to improve the targeting.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, I think something you touched on there, David, is synthetic audiences. I don't know if that was, what you were, one part of what you were alluding to, but I do think that's a big area of, now driving creativity, driving insights in marketing in general.
Yep.
Synthetic audiences are a fantastic way to fill gaps that we couldn't fill before. Like, in the industry, we've relied on research a lot. We've had to use large consumer panels for a lot of the work that we do. And now with synthetic audiences, you can build a synthetic profile of your customer using your data or with other data sources. And then you can iteratively understand what their preferences might be. Now, you obviously have to make sure that is sense checked and correct and all of that. But I think, that's kind of a fascinating and growing area for us. And you can take it from things, use cases from understanding how people might prefer a different ad, what they might feel about a different ad, right through to their digital experiences and some of the preferences they might have through their digital experiences. So we're certainly using it a lot across those fields.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of different guests on the show that have businesses that are doing basically, these sort of synthetic or virtual focus groups, where you can, where they build these audiences of consumers, and then they, basically run a panel. Here's the creative, tell us, and then you can get an understanding of how audiences will respond to it, even before you run the campaign.
Which is great. And I think, going back to the future predictions earlier, I think we have to believe that within the next few years, we'll be able to completely simulate a campaign, right? Before we did months and months of research, we did our due diligence, we used all of our tools to build a campaign and then take it to market, and then we find out if it worked, right? I think hopefully in the near future that will be a thing that we could simulate within AI environments with synthetic audiences, with various different approaches, but ultimately get to a point where we can make things more predictive. and hopefully remove some of the risk for advertisers.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I'll take that prediction one step further and say that I could envision, a Trade Desk or Google Advertising or Meta being able to create sort of like a sandbox. You create your campaign, you run it in the sandbox. It comes back and says, okay, here's the performance metrics on it. Would you like to take it live? And then you can tweak it, make some changes to it, try to improve the performance and get the best performance you can in that virtual environment before you actually take it live. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. I think that that is definitely something we will see in the future. We just predicted it. So
yes,
mark
absolutely.
our
Maybe
words.
the platforms themselves will maybe
Yeah,
potentially do it when you upload an image.
for sure. Yeah, why not?
Make it more native to their existing platform. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything either of you want to sum up on any of these three topics before we get into tech stack? So like any actionable advice you might give to any leaders, marketers tuning in on any of these? Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I think to pick up on one of the things I talked about earlier, I do think we're going to see a big shift from brand messaging and thinking about, from a brand first perspective to LLM citability, if you like, and people kind of flipping the model a little bit and move into more of an answer first brand strategy. So I think that's a big one. Start to think about, okay, well, what are the questions that my brand should be answering? What are the questions that happen within my category? Where do those questions typically happen? Where are people getting their information? And how can I start to build, LLM seeding approaches around those? And what kind of organic mix might I need to take advantage of that? Like, where am I? Is it Reddit? Is it Medium? Are there other places, affiliate sites that I need to start to work with to really power it? And I think, the smart brands will ultimately create answer first strategies going forward, and they will start to shape the agenda rather than the questions happening. I think Heinz is a great example of a brand that has iconic design and absolute association with the ketchup product, but like how can you create that kind of connection with things that are important to your brand that then ultimately will ensure that you're number one, the first mention and the first citation in every LLM going forward. So I mean that would be my biggest thing.
Definitely. Yeah. Great feedback. Thank you for that. And then real quick before tech stack, what role does iteration and human-led feedback loops play into training the models to be more accurate and timely? Right offer, right person, right timing. Any thoughts there, Andy?
I mean, yeah, everyone I think says human in the loop. So I think that is the model, ultimately, that we have automated processes that run things that can happen in an automatic way, and then there's a human who looks across with judgment, with reasoning, and decides, is that the right thing, and provides feedback, changes, amendments to the model so that then they get better. So yeah, I think that's I don't see a radically different model from that going forward. And then I think the onus is on people to really accelerate their skills of judgment, right? And that's kind of where the future growth lies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's get into our last topic, which is what we ask everyone who's come on all 197 episodes so far. What are your favorite tools in your tech stack that empower you and your team?
Well, look, my best friend is Claude, right?
Right.
It's and no offense to my real best friend, I apologize. So yeah, look, I mean, we at Brainlabs we have an approach to automation and AI which is pretty clear. So we're working in a focused way with a couple of platforms, and Claude is one. we selected that for the reasons, frankly, that it is just an incredible platform across a number of different fronts. Obviously, Claude Code is very strong. You alluded to that earlier. Co-work is fantastic, and it does, ultimately approach the generative space in a somewhat unique way from the other models. So it works very well for us. And then we couple that with Notion, which then allows us to organize all of the processes around Claude. So basically, with both of those things, we can get to great levels of automation, whereby, for example, we can be in a meeting, have everything captured within that meeting, and then that triggers some processes within Claude that then create follow-up actions from that meeting, books in all of the following meetings that you need, even starts to produce presentations that might be an outcome of that meeting. So it's wild. It's a crazy thing to experience. I thought I would always just be watching that on TV and in movies, but it's really happening right now. And so they're a couple of the favorites, I think, in the tech stack. I mean, how about you? Are you using those platforms, or you got other favorites?
David, you want to answer first?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Claude's definitely my favorite. I mean, we talked a little bit about this before the show. Like, they just keep coming out with more features, faster than you can imagine. And from what I've read, I guess they're using their own, eating their own dog food, as they say. They're having Claude Code write more code for them to create more features, and it's like, every time I load it, it says, it wants me to refresh the app, because I have the desktop app, and it's like, they added skills one day, and a few days later they added routines, and it's like, just like they just keep adding more and more stuff. So I think that we joked ahead of this podcast that, AI is freeing up your time, but I don't know, for me, it just keeps on taking up all of my time, because I keep wanting to use all the new features and programming new stuff and creating new skills and creating new routines. But yeah, that's definitely, as far as AI tools, that's without a doubt my favorite.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
I'm
good.
still kind of married to ChatGPT. I have started using Claude. I write a literature review, like actual data, where I need scholarly articles and journals that talk about marketing. And so like every week I'm writing a research review of what's going on with marketing, AI, live streaming, all of this. And I get better sources from Claude, and they're better at scholarly writing. But I'm really into automating right now. So like high level you can like work ChatGPT into their automation. So, based on triggers, you can have it do certain things. So yeah, maybe it's just because I like high level and it's really integrated with ChatGPT. But this has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, Andy. Before we close out though, would you like to let listeners know how they might be able to reach you after the show?
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely find me on LinkedIn. So you'll see my profile, Andrew Littlewood. I use my formal name on LinkedIn, or please check us out, brainlabs.ai. You can go to our website and you can connect with us that way. But yeah, please feel free to connect. I'd love to speak to you, and love to have a wider network on LinkedIn. So.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Andy. This has been a great conversation. I'm so glad you joined us on the show today. So thanks again, and then we'll close it out.
And that I will do. We will see you backstage, Andy, and everyone else. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Yeah.